Right. So tonight we're going to cover we're actually, I'm not going to walk through, I wanted to share a quick how it's in Cutco, but also this is in life, and creating versus collecting. And so I want to share for 5 minutes something real quick that's like a life thing that will impact you and also will impact your business in a big way. And then I really want to dive into two big factors, because a lot of you guys are working or are training as interns or are training to currently, like you're an assistant manager in training, or you're an assistant manager training to run a branch, or you're a branch on your second or third time going through GCLA and looking to level up and maybe go out and compete, and really go out and have a big branch next year. Think about Gordon, who went from shipping like 70 something thousand, like under $80,000 in his first branch, to his second branch selling over 300,000, or almost 300,000. And like just the impact that had of just like training again and doing it the right way. And so I'm super excited because every single person, whether you're a DM, a second or third time, a first time, or just like starting, you're going to gain some stuff that really makes a big impact in our business and will really help fuel the fall. Cool. So tonight is very focused on like making sure that you guys know how to impact two big influencers in productivity for representatives. And that's huge. So before that, I want to talk about just creating versus collecting. And so I posted this in the group meet earlier, if you saw it. I believe I posted it for everybody, not just for my staff. Yes, I did. And that image of collecting versus creating, you can look at it and study it and check it out for Cutco. All right, but I want to talk about in general, what it is. It's about taking action intentionally. Cool. A lot of people live their lives just kind of like whatever happens, like da-da-da, like kind of like go with the flow, which is cool, but you never know what's going to happen. Right. And that's fine, but for me, like, I know what I want, like I want certain things, like I want to be able to do stuff for my family. And I don't want to leave it to chance, and that's why I wrote a book called Design, like Life is a Masterpiece, Design and Live Life You Love Today, because I know that if you want to, you can design what you want, you can create what you want. Right. And it comes down to intentionality. And so creating versus collecting, like you can sit around in your life and just like, oh, let's see, or oh, whatever. Or you can be like, I want this. So like, what do I need to do to get here? Maybe you heard Nick talk 2 weeks ago and you're like, man, I want, or last week, I want to have my first real estate investment, right? Or you heard Rachel talking about, like getting your financial shit together. Maybe you started her course already. I know half of you guys have, which is just awesome. All right. And you're learning different things. And, you could just be like, oh, let's just see what happens. Right. Or you could say, you know what, I want to buy my first investment property in the next year, like Claudia, so my birthday present to myself next year is buying my house, right? Like setting a date and saying, by this time, here's what's happening. Like whatever it is that you want to do. You're like, I want to take my family on a vacation, next spring. And so then it's like, all right, cool. What do we need to do? And so then we figure out a plan so that you can go out, take action and get there. Right. And so with anything, if you really want something, you can always go out and get it, but it's about actually taking action to create what you want, not just waiting to see what happens. All right. And so that's a really big thing that I've noticed for years and really decades of coaching people and watching people, even before Cutco, when I was in high school, when I was in college, and just seeing people that were just kind of like, oh, this sucks. Like basically like, this is the cards I was dealt a shitty hand, like, woe is me. And, what they received, what they got, they're just like, oh, like this sucks. And like, I wish I was that person, or they're so lucky, who's ever heard someone say something like that? Raise your hand if you've ever heard somebody like that. And they're just like, always like, oh man, well, they probably just had it easier, or, oh, well, good for them. Or, and it's like, dude, if you want it, go out and get it. Right. Like everyone's not like that, like everyone doesn't have everything handed to them. I'm so excited. Claudia shared with me this the other day, and we were together having lunch last Thursday, and we were watching Oprah being interviewed. I think it was by Dr. Oz, but she was being interviewed about her new book. It's like, what happened to you, and just sharing stories of people and like what they went through and where they're at now, and I'm so excited to check that out, because like, I effing love stories of results. I love people that were not in a great situation, and Oprah opens up about more like trauma and things that happened to her, but it's like, she could have sat, and it's like, they're low income, there's verbal abuse, physical abuse, there's different factors, there's rape cases, there's all this stuff. And there's people that just go and just like, well, look what happened to me. Like, my life sucks. Like, look what happened. And they just like go down a downward spiral, maybe do a lot of drugs, maybe even take their life, and it's a real thing. It's a real thing that happens. And it's really fucking sad, but, people who've gone through similar situations, similar things, made different decisions. And they said, I'm not going to just like collect that as like my life. I'm not just going to say, this is what it is. I don't want that. Right. Here's what I want for myself. And they're going to go out and make decisions that take them elsewhere. A great friend of mine, and colleague, Carolyn, she's like, she went through some crazy shit, man, and like, she shares her story openly. And she's like, I was raped all young. We always had people coming in and out. We fostered, or my parents would let people come in to stay, homeless people to like feed them. And like, I was sexually assaulted multiple times. And then like, so someone started coming after my sister, and then I like would hide her and just have them take me, and like all that. And she shares all this stuff, all this trauma, like ex-husband who was like, I'm going to kill you if you leave me. And like, just did a lot of really horrible things. By the way, she's one of the most unbelievable, biggest, like just huge heart, super successful, like doctor, teacher, speaker, author. She runs a nonprofit now, One Life, that gives back to communities of low income to give them resources to get out of there. Give them resources to like a lot of stuff you guys get to learn at Cutco of how to design and how to set goals and how to make a plan and how to go after it, right? I mean, you guys have that. And so I don't want you to take that for granted. But again, in your life, you can sit back and I'm not saying collect, like, oh, let me collect this, but it's like, you just kind of like, whatever happens, happens. You're just letting it come to you, right? And in business, that's like, whatever, if you're producing whatever, but you're not like intentionally taking action, right, towards stuff. You're just like, oh, let's just see what happens, right? Let's see who call, let's see if people apply, let's see, versus like, okay, I want to create this amount. So like, how many ads, what do I need to do to be able to get this result? That's me creating that result. I'm not waiting to see if the result happens or not. I want this result. So what do I need to do? So I just want you guys to take that, because that's something that if you guys learn in your lives, that you can always create what you want. All right. Is it always going to be easy? No. All right. It takes commitment. It takes work. And for some people, it might be easier for them than it was for you, but it doesn't matter. You can still get there. And if you guys study people and you study like super successful people, and again, I'm so excited for Oprah's book to come out, because she highlights and she interviews people like Lady Gaga, like different people, like just people that went through some crap. Will Smith has a great story. Jim Carrey has a great story. Like there's so many other people that like came from nothing and said, I'm not going to just take this as my life. Like, I'm not just going to be like, oh, this is what it is. Like, I don't want this. I want that. And so I'm going to create what I want, and I'm going to take action towards it. All right. So I want to share that with you guys, because that's a life thing. That's a mindset thing. That's a, like, how do you do things? And it's crazy, because even for myself, I'm a go-getter. I go get stuff done, da, 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 da. But when I was in Cutco, in my first 3 years, I didn't understand that concept. I thought I was doing the right things. I would wake up in the morning when I had a PC and go do that PC. If somebody, like wanted to meet with me at 7 or 8 a.m., I would wake up and I would go meet with them. If I had something on campus, I would wake up and go to campus. Like, I would do that, right? I would run training. I would run my team meetings. I would do stuff. And what I didn't realize, and it wasn't until my 3rd year of being a manager, and I went cross training with one of the best in our company and someone who's my best friends to this day. And I remember being with Ryan, and I asked him, and I said, what do you think it takes to be great? Right? Like, I was sucking as a manager. Like, I should have shut down in 2004. It was bad. I was super in debt in 2005. I wasn't getting results. I wasn't getting it. I was really frustrated. And I went to go watch him run his office, and I saw, and I was like, oh, wow, like, this seems really simple, right? And so I was like, this doesn't seem that hard. So what is it that makes the best manager so good? And the document I just posted in there is what he shared with me. And he said this, he goes, the above average people in our organization, and not just in our organization, but in life, know how to create versus collect. And I was like, huh? And he explained what that was to me. And he goes, and so this sheet gives you examples of collecting versus creating, right? And so he's like, getting up when you have something to do, like, cool, right? Like, you're doing what you're supposed to do, right? You're getting up when you have something to do. He's like, but you're still collecting, because like, if you really want to create what you want, you wake up every day, right? And find something to do and to create, not just if you have something, right? He's like, you can wait for people to call and apply, or you can get out to campus, talk to people face to face and get people applying, right? He's like, you can, talk about, whatever it is. And you guys can read this on your own. I'm not going to dive in, but I remember him sharing that with me, and it was just revolutionary for my business. And in life, I knew that, and I had worked hard to like get what I want, but I didn't make the connection in our business when I started being a manager in our business. And it's not just in our business; it applies to any business. Just really understanding like, what is the difference between collecting and creating? Where are you at? And I remember that, Halloween of 2005 going, oh shit, like I'm totally collecting on most things in my business, and not intentionally, I just didn't realize it. And I made that switch. And 2006, our office was the first office in company history in our division to do $1 million. And I kept learning. And in 2007, our office was #1 in the company, Silver Cup. All right. And that came from me needing to really shut down in 2005 and being in huge debt and not being good at this, to turning that around. And that was a huge part, like just seeing how simple it really was, having systems and structure so that I could actually create what I wanted. It was night and day. And so just know that there's always a way to get what you want. All right. So before I dive into meat and potatoes, any comments on that? Any anything that you can think of that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this or whatever, like any comments, any questions, anything, and we'll transition. Anyone want to share? Cool. So we're going to dive in. John, were you going to say something?
No, just like, it's crazy because every year you like this is the fourth time I've gone through GCLA. It's just crazy that, the stories you share, Kathy, but also that like I'm always constantly learning from you. I'm just like, man, like I wrote down like 20 things. I was like, gosh dang it. It's just cool. Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And I'm glad to have you here for the fourth time. And it's like, what I love, is that we can hear the same crap over, but like, if you're really in a place where you want to learn, you're always going to learn something new, and you're always going to get reminders, because even sometimes we start with the right things, guys, in our lives, like whatever it might be, and we get really good at something. And a lot of times things keep evolving, right? But we forget some of the things that got us there and some of the foundational basic things that make a really big difference. And we stop having results, including my organization right now. And we're like, oh my God, what are we not doing? Like we've been recruiting, and yet we have like one of the lowest sales reports in the nation, but we're the #2 recruiters in the nation. Like there's something very off, and it's like, all right, what are we not doing? What are we not? And there's a lot of things, right? And it's like, all right, like let's turn the ship around. But the cool thing is that we do have control, and we can intentionally take certain action to create what we want. So, so I want to dive into, because I really want to get through all this and make sure to answer questions and make sure that we're really strong. Two things. So one, I want to cover what we were going to do last Tuesday and we didn't get to, with base pay management, minimum incentives. Okay. And I want to talk about this and why this is important, because this isn't just about getting people paid. Okay. So for me, can anyone answer? Can you tell me, why do we have a time card, right? Like we have the QPR, right? The qualified presentation report, or whatever version. Maybe you have a digital one, maybe you have a regular. And for those who might be newer, you're like, wait, what? It's the thing where you put the appointment you did, who was there, why they bought or didn't buy, how many recommendations, and who you spoke to, right? That should be reviewed at the end of every week with a manager, and then make sure your pay is properly done. But why do we have, like, what is the objective of that sheet? There's a couple things. All right. So can anyone tell me like what you feel the objective of having that sheet is?
Like to track progress.
Yes, Bree, that's the #1 thing actually for me, which most people don't say that right away. So props to you. All right. But yes, to track progress is the biggest thing. All right. So obviously we want to make sure that their pay is done properly, right? Like that's a factor. All right. We want to see like where they're at and what they're doing. And we want to find areas of opportunity to help them elevate. Everyone got that? So this sheet brings us awareness as to what they're doing, who they're seeing, what they're hearing, so that we're able to go, oh, and we can fix it. Now, when you're new, You don't know how to fix it all. Cool. You don't, because it's like, you guys are like college students, like for med school, right? So you're just learning. Like if someone came to you and they were like, Catherine, I have this thing, like, you're like, I don't know. Let me go look. Right. Like you might not know yet. And like, let's say you have, an uncle who's like a top doctor or dermatologist, and they go and they show him, he's like, oh my gosh, that's da, 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 or this could be this, or that. Like they know right away, right? Like when you guys go to doctors and they like check you and they're like, oh, you've got this, and they like give you the prescription and you're good, right? Like you become that doctor. And as a manager, assistant manager, whatever it is, like you got to act as if, right? Like you're in your fellowship, like you're at university, but like you're now putting into action, like you're going out there, what you're learning. And you might not know everything, all right? And it's okay here to say, like, I'm not sure, and ask for help. Hey, how would you handle this? What do you say? Like, how do I fix this person, right? Like maybe you're meeting with someone for their QPR, Bree, and you're like, shit, I don't know how to fix this, but I know there's a problem. Like take a picture, send it to me. How do I fix this? Like, what do I tell them to focus on, right? Because I can look at any QPR and I'm like, oh, here's where we're like, if they fill it out properly, I can find things very, very, very easily. And so we want to be able to look at stuff. So let me give you guys, a couple things. So first of all, like what's happening, like, did they buy or didn't buy? So on that column, it typically says like what they bought or why they didn't buy, right? And I want to make sure they fill that out, because if someone says, I can't afford it, I can't afford it, I can't afford it, I can't afford it, right? What I know, and if you want to write this down so that you guys know this, all right. And by the way, this is also, if you guys have ever heard my handling objections, right, workshop, it goes hand in hand that it helps you with some of the objections, know what went wrong, okay? And if you have not ever heard that, that's a great one. And Spencer, I don't know if you can find it real quick on YouTube and put it in the chat, but handling objections, huge, all right? So anyway, but that way, you know how to fix stuff, right? Like, what was the problem? Like, why did you get that objection, right? And like, the more you know that, the more you can help reps, right? So if I see, I can't afford it on their sheet, what do I know? Anyone who's been to my objections, anyone remember, like, if they say I can't afford it, like, what is that? What's the problem?
You didn't build enough value.
By the way, Bree, that's what a lot of people think. All right. And maybe
Writing prices.
All right. Maybe, Matthew, it was that. Maybe.
But you didn't find their
All
comfort.
right. We didn't find their comfort zone. Guys, here's I can't afford it. If that's on there, or if you hear that on a demo, right? If you're doing a demo, and again, watch my video again, or whatever, it's a smoke screen. We actually don't know exactly what's happening. If they just say, I can't afford it, what I know is that they weren't like all in, like they didn't really love it, unless they really lost their job. Like if they lost their job, that's one thing, right? If they were unemployed, we didn't know, like that's one thing. But if someone's getting, I can't afford it, it's like, I don't think that they really believe in the product. Like I know right away, the rep probably doesn't believe in the product, or they're not getting that excited. They're not transferring that to the customer. If they're getting a lot of, I can't, like those are smoke screens. Those aren't real issues. So customers don't want to share that with them, because they feel bad saying no. So they say, I can't afford it. All right. Now, if they said to you, Bree, I can't afford it, it's too expensive. Too expensive is totally building value. Cool. That they didn't feel that the price was worth the value. Cool. I can't afford it is not true. Everyone knows that it's not real unless they lost their job, right? Unless you're in an apartment working a paycheck to paycheck. That's not who we should be seeing. But sometimes we run into that and we didn't know. All right. So if you see on their sheet, I can't afford it, then we know, like, I know automatically they probably don't really believe a ton in it. So I'm just like, hey, so talk to me. The people you're seeing, do you feel they could afford it? Like, I'll ask them that. I'm like, so the people you're seeing, do you feel they could afford it? Like, honestly, like, just let me know. And they're like, oh, not really, like, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, do they not work? Like, are they not working, or, what's going on? And maybe they're like, well, yeah, my aunt lost her job. And then I'm like, oh, then we probably shouldn't have done the demo, but hey, no worries. But moving forward, like, if they don't have a job, I wouldn't see them, because this is not priority right now. The only reason I'd see someone who didn't have a job, I'd do a short fun demo, more goal sharing than anything, and then share my sponsorship to get leads. That's what I would do. You're not guaranteed the $18 for that. I would do it myself just because I want to get all their leads, right? So maybe my aunt lost her job. By the way, that happened with Amanj, my best friend, his wife's mom. When I did a demo for her, for Brittany's mom had just lost her job. right? And so he told me, he goes, look, Brittany's mom lost her job. She's not going to buy anything, but like, she knows a lot of great people. I was like, dude, I'll go see her. Like, I don't have to get base or anything. Like, I'm going to go see her to get the leads. Right. And I did a demo for her. You know, she told me I'm like, yeah, mom, she told me you lost your job. No worries. I'm like, my goal is that you love me enough and you like the products to introduce me to everyone, you know, cool. And I did the demo really quick with her, really emphasized on my goals, did the sponsorship. She didn't give me a ton of leads, but she gave me 12 damn good leads. And one of them I went to right when I left her house. She had called a couple for me. And I went over right when I left. She's like, oh my gosh, pack yourself, go, go, they're waiting for you. And I went to go see her friend, him and his wife, him and his wife. And when I went over there in 15 minutes, I sold a signature and a flatware setting, and I got 22 leads from them, just that one. Her other friend who was an artist bought an all knife set for me and gave me 15 leads. Another friend of hers bought a homemaker and whatever. Guys, like I more than made my money and multiplied my business, you know? And so that was a good decision for me to do. I wouldn't put that as like a qualified appointment because she wasn't working, but I was like, I'm going to do it because I'm going to get leads from her and then I'm going to fuel my business, you know? And so anyway, when I'm talking to her rep, I'm like, you're not guaranteed base to see if they don't work full time or whatever. Like you're not guaranteed that, you know, I know sometimes you didn't know, you know, and for this one, I'll pay you for that. But if they work, and so that's where we have to switch. And I'm like, do you, Francisco, so I know you said you don't like, they're really tight or whatever, but then I asked like, oh, are they not working? Like, no, they work. I'm like, they work full time. I'm like, they both work. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, you tell me if you are working full time, do you feel you could afford 11 to 15 bucks a week to do whatever you want with? Like if you work full time, do you feel you could spend 11 to $15 a week? What do you think like everyone says when I ask that question? They're like, yeah, of course, right? You go to the movies or you go to whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. So how about 20 bucks, 20 to 25 bucks? If you worked full time, do you feel comfortable spending 20 to 25 bucks a week on like whatever you want if you work full time? Almost everyone says yes again. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, just so you know, reminder, the starter sets, 22, 24 bucks a week, you know, like is what it comes down to for a studio, you know, or all night. I'm like, so they're literally putting aside 24 bucks a week, which comes out to $12 each. I'm like, so question for you, do you feel they could afford $12 each? They're like, well, yeah, probably. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, they just probably weren't that excited about it. I'm like, that's all. Right. And I think Zavi said that, like, we didn't find their comfort zone. I'm like, they just weren't that excited about it. I'm like, and they didn't want to tell you, Mia, they didn't want to say like, no, because they feel bad. And so they just say, I can't afford it. Cool. So just so you know that. So it's not that they can't afford it. It's just, they just weren't that excited about it. And you know what? 6 out of 10 buy, 4 out of 10 don't. You're going to get those. Cool. But like them not being able to afford it is not a real thing if they work. So I just want to make sure you know that it's not a real thing. It's a smoke screen. A real thing is it's too expensive because that means we didn't build the value. They don't think it's worth the money. A real thing is I got to think about it or whatever. And that, by the way, that goes back to their comfort zone. And that's where we use the deposit program. You know, real thing, like when they say like, oh, I can't do this or whatever, like, or I'm not going to use all those, like, you know, maybe they're not, maybe we didn't do a good job with names and uses, like whatever, we can improve all those things. But regardless, I can't afford, it's not really a real thing if they work. And they're like, oh, okay. And so a question for you guys, why would I go through explaining that to them? Even though like I'm going to pay them and go through and, you know, they're going to keep going doing demos. Why do I want to explain that to them? Like immediately, like first time I see that on their sheet, why I want to have that talk with them and, you know, just ask, hey, do you feel they can afford it? Wait, do they work? I'm like, all right. I'm like, well, hey, as a reminder, the smaller sets are actually only, you know, 24 bucks a week, which is like 12 bucks each. I'm like, question for you. If you worked full time, would you feel comfortable spending $12 to $15 a week on whatever you want if you worked full time? Okay. Would you feel comfortable spending 20, 25 bucks if you worked full time? I'm like, well, that's what it is. I'm like, so it's not that they actually can't afford it. They just don't want it. Like they weren't that excited about it. They didn't really want it, you know, or maybe they lost their job and they didn't want to tell you. Like that could have happened, you know, but that's not the real thing. And they're like, I'm like, now if they coupled it, right? Sometimes they do that. I can't afford it. It's too expensive, right? If you heard it's too expensive, that's a value thing for sure. That's a value thing. All right. So again, let me open it up. Someone answer. Why do I want to make sure they understand that they're like, oh yeah, they can't afford it. I'm like, yeah, so it's not they can't afford it, they just didn't want it. All right. Why do I want to make sure that's ingrained in their brain?
So they believe it themselves. So like when they're presenting it, you know, If they're comfortable with it, then the customer is more likely to be comfortable with it as well.
Guys, people, yes, Bree, right on the head. Like, I don't want them doing any more demos thinking in their head that people can't afford it. Everyone got that? Because if they heard that from multiple people, a new rep thinks that's true. That's not a real excuse unless they lost their job. Like, it's not. So listen to my talk on that. All right. And so I don't want their brain going, oh my God, everyone keeps telling me I can afford it. I guess people can't afford this. And that's going to ruin it for them, right? Because customers can feel when you really believe in it, when you really believe people should buy, when you're like, oh my gosh, like they can feel that. All right. I don't know if any of you guys have had a customer yet tell you like, wow, you sell a lot of this stuff, huh? Or like, you like this stuff, like they can feel that. All right. So your sense of confidence, like that transfers over to them. All right. And so you want to make sure you have that conversation immediately. Everyone good? The next thing, if you guys see on their sheet, and so write this down, please, you guys want to know how to fix people. If you see it's too expensive a lot, what's the issue? We just said it.
Can you build enough value?
It's value. Cool. Thank you. So it's value. So we need to rebuild value. And by the way, you could have them watch I think it's closing 101 or something where I walk through some stuff to help with belief. All right. And understanding value. That video helps with value. So Spencer, I don't know if you can put it in here. I don't know. Oh, he's on a call. But I believe it's called Closing Sales 101. And by the way, guys, a lot of this stuff, if you're like, oh man, I really want to like learn how to get good at things. I want to get better at sales. I want to help other people be better at sales. You guys should be on my YouTube channel. All right. It's not all perfectly organized, but I definitely have gotten a lot better and I'm very proud of that. And so in terms of organization, but if you guys go to Vector Gulf Coast Division or you search Kathy Kristen, you're going to go through there. All right. And you guys can go to videos and it'll show you all the videos. All right. And you can look at titles of stuff going through there, or you can go to playlists. So I created playlists and there's, getting more appointments, SE2 meetings, just some random product knowledge. There's rep development playlists, dropping down and closing tips. So here you guys can go in there and look, give them something to watch. All right. So you're like, all right, they can watch, building value or 3 parts to closing or handling sales objections or how to increase your average order, dropping up, going from bundles out, like what do they need? And I'm going to keep creating more, of these videos so we can help you guys out. And I don't know, the first thing I saw when we went to here was, I'm bummed out, was the one I wanted, the handling objections like showed up before. So anyway, but you guys can go on here and look for that so that you can help your reps with that. So if you just scroll down, you're going to see, there it is, handling sales objections. That's there. The other one I was just saying is the, it's from last year, but closing 101, I think is what it's called. So I'm looking here, but that one is a great one. So here, keys to increase your average order 101. That's what it's called. Keys to increase your average order. So that video, as well as 3 parts to closing with tips, are really important for reps to get good at if they want to close sales. All right. But keys to increase your average order, I hit on how people can afford, what things cost, and so building value for them. I build value in that video. Cool. And so I actually go on to Williams Sonoma or whatever. I show them what fridges cost, if they go to, buy a top fridge or a top appliance, Sub-Zeros. And so I go on there and show them that so that they can see it for themselves and be like, oh crap, I didn't know things cost that much. All right. And so, because they need to believe it and then to be able to build value for other people. Cool. So that's what I would have them watch so that can help increase. So everyone knows that, right? If you meet with someone, you see it's too expensive, make sure they're watching that. And then, you need to rebuild some value with them. But if they watch that, even if you don't know how to, help them rebuild value, then you can have, let them learn from me. All right. Have them watch that and say, hey, it's 30 minutes. Can you watch this tonight? Or when do you think you could watch it? How soon can you watch this? Cause I'd love to talk with you after and just hear your takeaways, and how you're feeling after you watch that. Cool. So that's what you want to do, guys. Anytime you give someone an assignment, it's not oh, Matthew, can you watch this week? And let me okay, how soon can you watch this? Cause this is going to be a big impact into your business. And I'd love to chat with you right after to debrief. answer any questions you had and hear what you took away from it, right? And that way they can share that with you. Cool. Other things you guys are going to see on there, if you see that's too many pieces, all right, what do you think you want to ask them? All right. And so this is like kind of like the opposite. Like if you watch my handling objections video, you're going to learn like where objections come from. That's going to help you, again, a lot better help other people. But if someone says, oh, that's too many, you're seeing on their thing, they didn't buy it's too many pieces, are not going to use all the knives, or my knives are fine. I guess you don't see too many pieces. You just see that they sold pieces, like they're selling a lot of pieces. So if you see them selling a lot of pieces, I know that they probably need help selling sets and or dropping down, you know? And so I'm like, hey, what do you, so like, they're either really bad at names and uses and people don't even want a homemaker, or they're really bad at the drop down process. Cool. It's one of those things. So when somebody's selling a lot of pieces, I'm going to ask them, I'm going to say, hey, by the way, why do you think you don't, you're not selling more sets? Be like, I'm just curious. Be like, we sell a lot of sets, obviously. And our goal is to always help the customer out, which you're doing a great job helping them get, you know, some Cutco pieces. And I'm sure in the future they'll, you know, add more. But just curious as to your thoughts. Why do you think, or what are your customers telling you? Or why do you think you're not selling more sets? Are they saying they're not going to use all of it? Do they want the homemaker? But then, you know, they can't do all that today, so you're selling less. Like I'm giving them options because they might not know. So those are the most common things. It's either like they're telling you that they're not going to use all those tools, right? And so they just want to get pieces, or they really wanted the homemaker, but like they couldn't do it all today. So then they started with pieces. What is more of what's happening? Everyone got that? Because if they tell you, oh, they said it's too many pieces, what do we know they need to get better at? Anybody?
Chopping down.
If they say it's too many pieces, they need to get better at names and uses. Cool. So make a note of that. If a lot of people are telling them, oh, I'm not going to use all that, I'm not going to use all that, that means that the customer is not connecting to each tool. All right. So they should watch Selling Sets Workshop by Dante, by the way, write that down. So if your rep is selling a lot of pieces and the customer says to them, but again, because you got to ask them, right? Because pieces mean, so you guys write this down. This is, and Molly, I don't know if you can help me make a cheat sheet with this, but if you see on a QPR pieces, like a lot of pieces sold, it's one of two things. The customer doesn't feel they're going to use all the tools, or the customer loves the homemaker but can't do it all today, and they just want to get pieces to start. Like 99%, it's one of those two things. Cool. So we want to find out what it is. So again, all you have to do. So those are the two main reasons they're selling pieces. All right. So not creating excitement for the homemaker, or customer can't do all that today. All right. So if they're not good at connecting the customer, they need to get better at names and uses. So they can watch names and uses. Definitely watch Dante Selling Sets because he goes through stuff there. And I'll have another video, you know, for you guys. I'm going to put some different links. We're going to create a sheet so you guys really know how to get people better. And I'm going to work on that. We're starting now, and I'm going to work more with Molly and the girls, with Allison and Abby, Spencer and Cass this weekend, to make sure that we have that, because I want you all to be great at that and be able to help people. Like, one, this is going to help you get really good at it, but also you're able to help so many others, you know? And then if they say, no, they definitely wanted the homemaker, they just couldn't do it right now because whatever, then what's the problem? Dropping down. Cool. So make a note of that. So if they said, oh, no, my customer really liked the homemaker, Abby, they just like, they can't because da, 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 da. I'm like, all right, no worries. I'm like, well then, hey, did they pay in payments? Do they pay in full? You know, and some pay in payments, some people, I'm like, hey, for $20 more, they actually could get a nice set that has those 2 and 3 more, and a storage unit, and a cutting board, and $100 of free stuff. You're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, so it's like way better for your customer, the packages and bundles that are available. And so I'd love to show you that. And so there's 2 things. The first thing they want to watch is how to drop down properly. That's step 1. All right. So again, if they're selling pieces and the customer liked the homemaker, but they're saying, I'm going to get it later, not now, or I can't do that, whatever, they need to actually like learn how to drop down better. All right. And the second thing that they can watch, once they've mastered dropping down, then they can watch how to drop up, right? That's more advanced. But like, once drop down is the most, so this week, I'm not going to give them both videos. This week, I'm going to go, hey, Francisco, can you watch this dropping down video? And then I'd love to debrief it with you. Like, how soon do you think you can watch? It's 30 minutes. How soon do you think you could watch that 30-minute video so that we can talk through it? Because I really want to help you get stronger. And like, if you get this, like it can increase your average order by like $150, like right away, you know, and even more. And they're like, oh, I could watch it here. I'm like, all right, awesome. I'm like, then let's make sure we schedule a call for after, because I'd love to hear your thoughts and help you keep improving. Okay. And they're like, all right, awesome. And then the next week, you know, maybe they're doing better with that, maybe not, but I'm like, there's a couple different, like they can watch McCall doing drop down live. They can watch Dante teaching on dropping down. They can watch me teaching on dropping down. Like there's different videos for that. All right. And there's the list there that they can look at, but give them the first one to start with, and then you can give them others. And then, you know, once they're feeling really comfortable and you see them selling once you see them selling homemakers and galleys and starter sets and pieces, so not just pieces, but they're also selling sets, then I'm like, hey, do you want to learn how to turn those ones that are pieces into potential set sales? Because half of your piece orders can actually turn into set sales if you know how to drop up. So it's different than dropping down. So it's like, once you get to pieces, how do you go to a bundle or package? So that's the next thing they want to learn. That's dropping up. All right. By the way, I hope some of you are listening to me right now and you're like, shit, I need to watch these videos. All right. Because you want to get really good at this. All right. It's going to obviously impact your business, but it's also going to help you impact your reps business. All right. Can you give me a thumbs up if you've learned something so far? Thumbs up. Got something. All right, cool. Because again, the QPR sheet is not to pay them. Yes, we're going to pay them. Yes, that's part of it. All right. But that's not just its purpose. It's not, here's my time card, pay me. All right. It's the first thing Bree said. We want to track their progress. We want to see how they're doing. We want to find areas of opportunity to make them better, to make them stronger. And so are you giving them tools every week to help them improve on the area they need most improvement on? Cool. We don't need to fix everything at one shot. Okay. Like that's a lot. Like, let's go through it. And maybe there's 2 or 3 things you see, right? Maybe I see a QPR and it's like, they're selling a lot of pieces. We feel that they're not getting a lot of recs, right? It's like something with sales and something with referrals. Like that would be the maximum for the week. So let's do this one and then let's go over this one, right? But just, it's a little homework to help them keep improving. And again, you can relate it. Be like, I just want to get you good. You know, it's like no athlete or performer would be on a stage or whatever if they didn't know their stuff, you know? And so we want to make sure that you know your stuff. So you're feeling good, you're skilled so that you can maximize performance and your income, because the more you learn, the more you earn. Okay. So that's really big. Other things you're going to see on a QPR. So I'm like, all right, can't afford it, too expensive. You know, you're going to see people that's selling a lot of pieces, right? And so we know they need help dropping down or, you know, creating excitement for an actual set. And then another thing you're going to see is who they're seeing, right? And so you might see S, 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 H, H, HW, HW. All right. If you're seeing that, what's the problem? Why they're not selling? What's the problem as to why they're not selling?
They're not seeing married people.
They're not seeing the right people. Yeah, they're not getting in front of MAC customers. If you're seeing MAC customers, 6 out of 10 max buy, period, across the country. And when you get good, 8 or 9 out of 10 max buy, by the way. All of our sales professionals have 85 to 95% closing ratios. Okay. And so like, are you actually seeing the right people? So we want to guide them. All right. So their first sheet, and we're going to talk about like their first sheet, I'm always going to pay them assuming they didn't hear me or I wasn't clear, even if I said it 10 times. All right. So I'm like, hey, Matthew, I know I covered this in training and like, maybe you were in the bathroom, maybe something happened. Like I kind of like give them an out, right? Even though I might've been staring at them the whole time. And I'm like, I literally said this and you were staring at me and you still did it. Right. Like, no, like we're going to give them like the benefit of the doubt. And so we're like, hey, I don't know if you were in the bathroom or something happened or you're grabbing food when I covered this. But the base pay is guaranteed, you know, for qualified customers. Like if you have an exception, you have to make sure you get approval. Cool. And so you have to talk to me and you're like, hey, I have this person and I'm like, all right, cool. No problem. If you have an approval, be like, once you're over 6,000 and you've passed your skills, I really don't care who you see. I'm like, because by then you figured it out, who are the right people, what to do, you know, but until then, I want to make sure, you know, you're getting approval and we're going through so that we can really strengthen your business. Cool. So this week, like, let's focus on max only. I'm like, let's get your skills up. I'm like, once you pass your skills checks and you're there, I'm like, see whoever. I'm like, but don't ruin those leads that are harder. All right. Because you don't have that skills yet. You don't have the skills yet. Cool. And they're like, all right. And so we make it very clear. I'm going to pay you for these, but this week, let's focus on max only. If you have an exception you want to see, let me know so we can talk through it and see if it's a good one. Cool. Or if it's one that it's better to wait until you have a little bit more skill set. Does that sound good? Like, yeah. All right, cool. So that's that. All right. Other things. And actually you guys can tell me, what are other things you guys see on QPR? So I'm like pieces. Oh, if they say I need to ask my spouse, like if it's like, I need to think about it, or I need to ask my spouse, if you see that on people's QPR, what do you want to teach them? What do you want to make sure they know how to do? Someone who's not from my office. So these guys have gotten extra coaching in my office. Someone not from my office, no, and then we can go to my office. So if you see on their QPR what I just said, all right, and you're looking here and you're like, I need to think about it. I need to think about it. I need to ask my spouse. All right. What is it that we need to teach them?
How to set up like follow up with him.
Okay, we can. All right. And so by the way, if they say they need to ask their spouse, like definitely if they're getting a lot of they're seeing a lot of wives alone, we want to make sure they're seeing both the husband and wife together. All right, for sure. But it's actually a bigger thing. We want to teach them the deposit close. We want to teach them how to use the deposit properly when they're seeing a wife, when they're seeing a couple, like how to rephrase it. And again, if you watch my handling objections video, you're going to learn how to do that. But if I'm seeing a wife alone, the fourth part of the guarantee is our husband back guarantee. All right. And so Miss Jones, I see a lot of wives home during the day, like a lot of house moms and stuff. Like I'll see them without their husband. And obviously most couples like to make decisions together when it comes to stuff from the house. Cool. So what many of the moms I see do is they use our deposit program. And so what that allows you to do is put down 100% refundable, security deposit on the set. So the deposit for that set that you liked is 180. And you'd put the deposit, it's 100. And again, you write it down, right? 100% refundable. They're looking at it. And so it gives you 3 weeks to use the products with your husband, show him everything, and for you guys to make a decision together. Worst case scenario, you send the products back, you get 100% of your money back, you had free Cutco for 3 weeks. Cool. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, do you want to go ahead and, pay for it all today? Or do you rather do the deposit like most of the moms do, so that way you can get it, show it to your husband, use it with him, and then make a decision together? Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what most of the moms do, and you close. Like even if a woman, and by the way, the other thing, let's say if you have I'll talk to a mom and I'll ask them like, oh, by the way, is your husband going to be there? And I've had, stay-at-home moms and people are like, well, does he need to be? And I'm like, well, it's up to you, but I do love to see couples together, because most couples, if they see something for a home, they usually make decisions together for things for a house. So it's just easier that way. I'm like, do you normally make all decisions with your husband for things for the house, or do you do that on your own? And they're like, oh yeah, we do everything together. I'm like, yeah, that's how my parents are too, or they'll be like, I do whatever I want. I'm like, okay, sounds good. All right. And that person, that mom who said, I do whatever I want, like I buy whatever I want, I still do the close like this. So when I do the close and I'm like, so the homemaker, like when I get to the end and I present the price and I say, so actually the homemaker is actually only da, 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 da. All right. And so Miss Susie, you could pay for in full today if you want. And I know you said you do whatever you want. I'm like, but most of the moms I see like to use our deposit program. And the reason is obviously you haven't had a chance to use it yet. You haven't even seen the products, and maybe your husband likes extra stuff, or I don't know, but like what they do is they put the deposit, we can get it. You can use it for 3 weeks, use it, see how you like it, show it to your husband as well. Worst case scenario, send it back. You get 100% of your money back, and they're like, all right, cool. So you apply it there. If you have someone who's uneasy, I always close with the deposit close. So they might not know the deposit close, right? So people, even though we teach it in advanced training, like some people, it goes one in ear, out the other, right? Or they saw it once, that doesn't mean they get it. For someone to get it, they normally need to hear something at least 3 times, okay? For someone to really get it. And so this is very important when you guys are going through with reps, and that they really understand this, but like, do they know how to use it? Just because it was taught doesn't mean they're using it. So how do you know? You just ask them, you're like, hey, real quick, can you do your close for me real quick? Like the close takes 2-3 minutes for them to do, but you want to see what they're doing. You're like, oh, I'm like, do you know the deposit program? Have you learned that yet? And they're like, oh yeah, I think I did an ATM. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, hey, I'd love to practice that with you to get you comfortable with that, so that you can start implementing it, because some people have learned it, guys, but they're not implementing it. And the reason they're not implementing it is they're not super comfortable on how to really execute it. All right. Who can relate to that? At some point you learned something and you didn't really know how to execute it, so you didn't do it. Raise your hand if you can relate to that. Okay, guess what? You're not the only one. All right. And so what they learned it. Okay, cool. Hey, why don't we set up a time tomorrow? Or maybe you have time then. Maybe it's setting up a PC for later that night or tomorrow. Why don't we get time tomorrow so we can work on it together and make sure you get really comfortable? Because if you close like that, you're going to eliminate a lot of the people that say, I need to think about it, because when you close, you're like, hey, you know what, Miss Susie, you guys could pay for it all now, but most people I see, they want to try it out. They want to think about it. They want to make sure they're making the best investment. And so what they'll use is they'll use our deposit program. And so it allows you to do, and you guys know the rest, right? And so again, watch my objections video, because I walk through a little bit more in that'll help you with that for your own demos and then help other people with theirs. All right. So that's big. What else? Shoot anything else. What are other things, common things? Obviously recommendations, right? If you don't see them getting sponsors every time, immediately when I'm checking their thing, I'm like, Francisco, do me a favor, ask me for Rex real quick, just like you would with the customer. Like, huh? Right? Because we're like doing their pay, but I'm just ask me for Rex. I just want to hear it real quick. All right. Again, it doesn't take that long. They take 2 or 3 minutes to ask you for Rex. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, well, hey, I want to work with you on that, because I didn't hear you talk about the sponsorship. I want to make sure you're comfortable with this. I'm like, this is the gas to your vehicle. Cool. And so we want to make sure that gas, like you have that gas constantly to keep your car running. And so I want to make sure we're memorizing. I'm really comfortable with explaining the jab, the joke, the reminder. I want to make sure you're really comfortable explaining the sponsorship. So why don't we meet tomorrow? Why don't you meet with so-and-so tomorrow so we can practice and get you really comfortable, so we can give you some tips to help you at a minimum be getting 10, but show you how the top guys get 20, 30 or more. Is that cool? Are you cool to meet up? All right. And then when you meet with them, can you guys tell me when you meet with them, because they're not getting a lot of reps, what are some of the things? So Allison, I'm going to pick on you. All right. Sorry, putting you on the spot. But what is something, maybe not all the things, but what is something is going to help them get more referrals? What are the things you want to work on with them? Obviously, one is the approach. Let's go past the approach. So we want to get them comfortable asking properly. But what else is going to impact them getting sponsors?
Sharing your goals properly.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Sharing goals. So when you meet with them for the PC, I would say, Mia, can you show me your slide deck? Oh, I don't have one yet. I'm like, oh my gosh, let's take 5 minutes and do that, because that is a game changer. It ties customers into you as a person and how this benefits you for your future, not just the knife girl. If they're just thinking of you as a knife girl, they're thinking, who needs knives? And that's a very small percent of people. You might get 2 or 3, maybe. Cool. If they're thinking of you as the young person who's highly motivated and working hard for this, that, and whatever, and they're so impressed, they're like, man, they want to introduce you to people they know, and they want to do anything they can to help you. And even if that just means a sponsorship to keep you going because you get paid just to do it, heck yeah, they want to do it. All right. And so that's really important that we show them goals. All right. And then there's the other thing that you guys want to make sure. So write this down. Do they know their approach? Do they know how to share goals properly? Do they know how to explain the sponsorship properly? Please write those down. Do they know how to say the approach? Do they know how to share their goals properly? Do they know how to explain the sponsorship properly? Those are the 3 things, the 3 main things that you need to do to help them get better with recommendations. Everyone good so far? All right. And so I'm gonna, that's off the top of my head, I think I hit most of the things. I'd love to hear real quick, and then I'm going to show you guys how to put someone on a base pay freeze. We're going to practice that. And then I have one more lesson that I wanted to go through with you guys today in terms of setting people up for their first weekend, which we'll do part 1 today, part 2 next week. Okay. So feedback from that, questions, comments from what I just covered with you guys, or anything you want to add, like if I missed something.
Yeah, I wanted to add something on the recommendations. Something that it's kind of like half and half for a lot of people I work with is I always also make sure to, if they're like a little more introverted, they're not a super confident person already, reassure them and like make sure that they're comfortable asking for X, that they don't think it's weird to like ask, because I know that was me when I first started. I I wasn't super comfortable doing it. And so outside of just memorizing it, making sure that they're actually comfortable with asking for names, because a lot of times that 2-minute conversation can make a world of difference for them, at least with people I work with.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder, Matthew. And I think about asking them, like, one, the first question you can ask is, do you ask for Rex every time? All right. Who here's done a demo and not asked for Rex? Raise your hand, Zavi, and anyone else. All right. If you've done a demo, you're like, oh my God, I forgot to ask for Rex. So one, ask them, like, do you ask for Rex every single time? All right. And some people will tell you no, because they're rushed, they had to go or whatever. And I'm like, okay, we need to see when they're asking for Rex, guys. Okay. It's not once they did the order, put it online, did all that. Cool. Like they need to be asking for Rex. Like they finish, they see what they like. They're like, all right, so before I put your order or whatever, I'm like, I have a little project for you. I'm like, how did you enjoy the presentation? Like they need to ask for referrals. And then while they do that, then they can go work on the order, call their manager, do deals and all that while the customer's doing the referrals. Okay. So we can check the order. The other thing is, what's your comfort? So Matthew, I'm like, are you comfortable asking or do you feel bad? Ask them that. Like give them a chance to say, I kind of feel bad or like, I feel weird or whatever. So I'm like, are you comfortable asking for Rex or do you feel like an inconvenience or do you feel weird or awkward? Whatever? I don't know. I've heard different things. And people are like, yeah, I feel bad. I'm like, and then you can dive into that because it's like, oh, what makes you, I'm like, for you, I said, and then I just share for me, I'm like, when I meet a young person who's like, we're like someone who's like working towards something going, I'm like, heck yeah, dude. Like, I want to do anything I can to help them out, like in any kind of field, like not just this, but I'm just like, when you see people who are like on a mission, working towards something, I'm like, I want to help and be whatever part I can, in that process. And just know people are inspired by motivated people with a vision and a goal, people that are going somewhere, people are impressed and inspired by that. And they're excited to be a part of that journey. And so I just let them know that. And I'm like, so don't forget that. I'm like, you're working towards stuff. I'm like, people are impressed with that. And they're excited to help you. I'm like, and if they can't, no worries. I'm like, but most people, like, they do want to. Like they did the demo because they wanted to help you. They give you Rex because they wanted to help you. They buy because Cutco's freaking awesome. They buy more now or buy gifts because they like you and want to get you because they liked it initially. Like they have to like it. And then they're like, you know what? Let's see what else we can get, if you shared your goals, right? So if you share your goals properly, it helps you increase your sale average order and sell more frequently, but other things and stuff we went over here with the QPR or anything I missed, you're like, how about when you see this on a QPR, what do I do? Can I please get some of that? Francisco, I saw you say, what do you say to someone who says their husband wouldn't sit through a demo? I'm just going to hit hard on that. On if I know their husband's not going to sit there, I just know that I'm closing with the deposit program. And I'm saying, hey, Miss Susie, obviously your husband couldn't sit through the demo. And so what most wives I see that, do it without their husband is they use our deposit program. And so that allows you to, so you just like, that you're going to be closing with the deposit and you're going to say that way you can get it, use it with your husband, see how he likes it. And then you guys make a final decision together. Cool. So you're going that way. What else? Zavi.
Okay, so one issue that I'm having that I have a question about though when it comes to getting people is when you go through your goals and everything and you do well, and you get to the part about the rec approach, then they start being real specific about who they want to recommend. And like it's good that you're getting quality people, but then you get like 2 or 3 recommendations rather than when you were getting 10 or 20. So how do you address that situation?
Yeah, then you go, so Miss Susie, now who do you know that wouldn't buy, but they're super sweet like you? I'm like, I love seeing nice moms and I get paid every time I do it. And by the way, you're like, so I asked and they people give 2 or 3, and especially if they want to really help you, right? Because they just want to give you the people they think will buy. And then I'll say, Miss Susie, who do you know that works and eats? Who do you know? Like I'll ask, who do you know that works and eats? Who do you know that doesn't hate college students? I'm like, no, but seriously, who do you know that won't buy, but they're super sweet like you? I'm like, any nice moms, I get paid every time I do it. And so that I get paid every time I do it, just so you know, you're not gonna say it once, you're not gonna say it twice, you'll probably say it 3 to 5 times as you're getting referrals, reminding them like, hey, who else is super nice? Because I get paid every time I do it, you know, and who else, you know, might be willing to help me do a quick presentation because I get paid every time I do it. Like it's like a repetitive thing. They need to keep hearing that because they're still just thinking, who's gonna buy, who's gonna buy, who's gonna buy. And so like you have to keep saying that in a nice way as you're helping them brainstorm. Cool. What else with the QPR? What have you guys seen? What did you guys know? Like, how do we fix things?
And I've had to do this a couple times, but when would, like, for the new representatives, any good reminder for me, when do you, like, because at times when you're looking at one, you kind of know if they actually didn't do the appointments. When do you start, like, I guess any tips on calling the customers? What questions do you ask the customers to verify the appointments? Things like that. Like, I know that's like the drastic, like, hopefully we never have to do it, but we have to do it every now and then. Any tips on how new managers can take that into action?
Yeah, for sure. So first off, anytime that, you know, there's more like 0 for 6 or more, like I'm like, what's happening? Like I want to dive in a little bit more. And if it's someone that, like, if you're not sure, call the people to confirm it. If it's someone that's like honest and ethical, whatever, like I trust them. I'm like, hey, what's happening? I'm going to dive in to try to help them. Right. If I see that again, the next day they're like putting in, like if they put in 0 for whatever, like 2 weeks in a row, like I'm going to call. If someone's like, I don't know about this person, you know, like they didn't call in from every demo this weekend, I'm definitely calling to confirm those. Cool. Like that's a clear sign that they're just like base pay chasing or making up stuff. All right. So if they didn't call in, you need to call those right away. You know, if someone's like being weird or like seems off, if someone turns in 2 or 3 weeks in a row with like all zeros, like something's off, like you want to check those. All right. In terms of how to call, if you go in the admin folder, the Cutco admin folder, and it says RSD West Frank base pay minimum. And so this is just explaining base pay, you know, liability versus asset. It goes through like things to you know, things that you guys can plug in the interview, how to handle situations, by the way. And so this goes, you know, he has verbiage on like what's happening here and like how he handles that. And then, oh wait, I thought he had the script on there too. Maybe I have it somewhere else here. But to call the people, there's another, and I'll get it for you. I don't have it here. I thought I put it in here. So I'll get that for you in terms of calling people, because I definitely have a version of it. I lost my old one when my computer crashed. So I'll get that for you. Cool. Because there's a, you know, something to call them, like, how did they do? Did you like this better or this better? Like, what cutting demonstration did you like the most? The can, you know, the penny, or the whatever. I don't know. There's like different stuff that you can ask. So we'll go through that, because again, I had it before, but when my computer crashed, I lost it. All right. Now this is something we're going to go through now, is the verbiage on this. We're going to role play this together so you guys can see what this looks like. If there's any like grammar, which I'm sure there's going to be grammar issues, you guys can let me know so we can fix it. All right. But I'm going to share this with you guys now, because we're going to go through this in a second. I do want to hear anybody else in terms of takeaways from what I just shared, in terms of like reviewing a QPR with someone and like helping them improve. What are other takeaways, things you learned, or any other questions that you had? Please fill up the chat box with things that you learned, because I would really like to know that. I would like to know that I didn't talk for an hour and you learned nothing.
How would you handle like a rep who is like pretty aggressive? Like when you ask about like, you know, like you kind of figure their base pay chasing, but you're not, you know, literally saying that to them. Like, so how do you like handle like aggressive reps? Because like I've definitely seen that. So
yeah, and how did they get aggressive after you, like the first time they turned it in, or later once you told them that some of the ones weren't right, like didn't check out?
Probably like after. Well, it was after like they had told me that like, oh, like I never got paid and this and that. Like, so that's when like they would get aggressive when I would quit.
Okay. So I'm glad you mentioned this, Bree, because I want to say this to everyone. Let's say, you know, someone's like totally bullcrapping, right? Never not pay them. Never not pay them. Now, am I going to pay them for the 20 they turned in, over 10, over 15, over 20, when I haven't even talked to this person? Hell no. All right. I'm gonna pay them for 2 to 4, like whatever I heard from them. If they called you 3 times over the weekend, I'm gonna pay them for 3. If they called me for whatever, like, and if they didn't call me, I'm going to pay them for 2. I'm always, even if they didn't call all weekend, I'm going to pay them for 2. Why? I don't want to say I didn't get paid. Got it? So they got paid. Now, did they get paid properly? No. And I'm going to tell them why. So if they're like, wait, my paycheck was only this, how come it wasn't this? I'll say, oh, hey, it actually got red flagged by the company because it's not normal for them to see that. And so they're just checking in to make sure that they all verify. But I wanted to check in with you first to know, are there any here that maybe didn't happen? Maybe you were going. So this is my nice way of being like, did you lie on this about anything? This is my nice way of saying this if you want to write this down. So I'm like, are there any on here that you were going to do, and so they were on your sheet, but you actually never got to do them? Are there any like that on here? And sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this one and this one, like I never got to do them. They had to reschedule. I'm like, okay, cool. They shouldn't be on here. So once you complete them, then we'll put them on here. Cool. Anybody else that is not married, anyone else is not average age or a homeowner, like, because the company will check that. And again, the guaranteed base pay is there for qualified appointments, the people that work full time and you know the rest. And they're like, you know, they're like, oh yeah, no, I did them all. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, hey, I'm going to send it to them so they can verify everything, and then we will get you paid next week. And by the way, some people just ghost, you know, some people will tell you, well, actually, I only got to do these or whatever, you know. And if some people like bull crapped, you know, like afterwards, I'm gonna let them know, like, hey, I don't know if this is gonna be the best fit. Like, we're gonna pay you for these, and I'll pay them for what they said they did. I'm like, I'm gonna pay you for this, but moving forward, I don't think it's gonna be the best fit, you know. And so I think it's definitely better if you look for another job, you know. So we'll pay you for these, and then, you know, kind of part our ways. And I'll pay them because I don't ever want them to be the person on the internet that says they didn't get paid. All right. By the way, those things came from people that bullshitted, right? And managers didn't pay them. And then they're on the internet saying they never paid me, right? But they didn't freaking do the work. So I just don't want that. So I want to catch it immediately. You don't want to wait weeks later to catch this. And so that's why I'm going to walk through right now the process and making sure you guys do this properly. Okay. And it looks like we're not going to get to the first weekend stuff this time. We'll do it next week, but that's fine. Because this is powerful. And this is not just about pay. This is about getting people good at the job so that they love it, so that they're seeing success, so they get to take advantage of all a Vector has to offer, right? Like, that's what we want for our people, is that they get to have hopefully the type of experience we did, you know, personally, professionally, and or financially, and hopefully all three. Like, that is my goal, you know? So anyway, let me show you guys the process with this so you guys can see it. But yes, like if someone did bull crap, you know, we call them, we know they lied. Like maybe I didn't even call them, I just know they lied, you know, then I'm going to say like, hey, Julie, you know, we checked these out, like everything didn't check out. Like, so I always like to call so that I have, but like, there's always like wrong numbers, Pizza Hut, like their 22-year-old friend, you know. And John, to your point on the questions that you guys are going to ask them, it says like, oh, just so I know for our records, are you under 30 to 60 or over 60? I'm like, okay, great. You know, and by the way, the young people, it's so funny. They don't say, oh, I'm under 30. Some do, but most go, oh no, I'm 22. Like that's like that when you say, are you under 30 to 60 or over 60? They're like, oh, I'm 18. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, under 30. So you know, all right. And so if they just, guys, if they have one that doesn't check out, I don't want them working with me. That's fraud. Cool. Like, that's it. And I'm going to tell them, and I've met with them and I'm like, look, I don't think it's going to be a great fit. I'm like, just so you know, right now I could actually press legal action. Like I could actually file a police report for fraud because the base pays insurance. Have you ever heard of an insurance fraud, like for your car, for your house? Like insurance fraud, it's a felony. You actually go to jail, just so you know. And so the base pay is insurance that I guarantee. And so when you're falsifying information, it's stealing company money, it's stealing my money. And that's fraud. Okay. And I had a kid go, well, I did the other ones. I'm like, I get it, but that's like going to Macy's and like buying $1,000 of stuff, or I don't know, $200 or whatever. You bought something and then you stole some shit in your bag. And if the police got you and you're like, but I bought something, just because you bought something doesn't mean you can steal something. Does that make sense? Okay. It's not how it works. So I'm like, so just moving forward, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel that there's a trust factor. And with how much leniency we give you guys and how much freedom. I can't work with people that I don't know that if we can trust their word or not, you know? And so I'm going to pay you for all of these. I'm going to go ahead and pay you for them. But moving forward, I don't think this is going to be the best fit. Cool. So I definitely recommend finding another job, you know, and if anything changes in the future, you know, I'm more than happy to try it again. But at this point right now, I'm just not feeling comfortable. What do I get? Like, people get fired all the time. Like, that's me firing them. I don't want you on my team, you know, but I'm not going to say I don't want you on my team. I'm just like, look, trust has been hurt. And like, I don't feel comfortable like guaranteeing. Oh, sorry. I missed one part, Brie. I'll say, so you can just work strictly off commissions and you work for the company and Cutco will always pay you commissions. No problem. Cool. But I don't feel comfortable having you on our team and guaranteeing you the base, because that's a trust thing. And we broke that trust. And I just don't feel comfortable with that right now, you know? And so I think it's going to be better for you to find another job. And if in the future you want to try again, I'm open to that for sure. But right now I'm not comfortable with it. All right. And that's fine. And I pay them and bye-bye, see you later. I'm not going to keep doing that. Okay. So let me show you guys this. And then I'll open it up for like more questions and things here. All right. And so that's really huge. All right. And yes, John, they do. I'm like, I can file fraud, you know, like I'm like, corporate can file a police report. Like there's stuff that's like, does not check out. Like, is there anything that you shouldn't get paid for? And by the way, the ones that were false, or they say like didn't come, I'm like, I'm not going to pay you for these. This was an 18-year-old. This was a Pizza Hut. This was whatever. But the other 7, I'm going to go ahead and pay you for those, but just moving forward. So I pay them for the ones that they legit did. Cool. Or they said they did, that I didn't talk to, that said like they weren't a real demo. All right. I think I said that right. I like confused myself. So this is how this rolls. All right. So they start, they finish training on the weekend, right? And they go about their first week. So first thing is, for me, in advanced training, when they first come to advanced training, I'm always going to check. I always want to check them. But let's say you didn't. Their first Sunday at the office, all right, it's the end of their fast start. Should be their first PSP. Maybe you do it on Monday. Maybe you do it on Sunday. But the first time they come to do their first full week's check, right? So again, let me pause and say, this is beyond, like, this is after. So first weekend, I always pay for everything that they do their first weekend. Whatever they submit, I'm gonna guide them. I'm gonna go, hey, by the way, I see here you saw single, you know, no sale, or whatever. By the way, as long as they called in, everyone got that? As long as they called in, because we told them in training, you have to clock in, you have to clock out, you have to call from your jobs. That's how we know you did it. Just like if you work at a mall, you clock in, you clock out, same deal here. So they ghosted and I only heard from them from 3. I'll typically come somewhere in the middle, but I'll ask them because I want them to feel comfortable. So like, let's say Allison called me 3 times this weekend, right? From 3 demos, but she turns in on Monday, you know, 10 demos that she needs to get paid for, you know. I'm like, all right. I'm like, well, hey, Allison, you know, I'll look at it with them. And I'm like, Allison, this weekend, I'm like, I heard from you 3 times. I'm like, you know, the pay, you have to actually clock in and out, you know, so I can help, so we can coach you. Like, it's there as a safety net. And I'll ask them like, hey, what happened? Oh, I didn't get through it. I'm like, are there any demos here that didn't get completed, that you like, you know, put them on here, but you didn't get to do them yet, or any that should be off? And many times there's 1 or 2, you know, or more. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, well, hey, I'm going to pay you. And it's like all these single, I'm like, or Allison, you had all these single people, like you shouldn't have been seeing that. I'm like, and that's where I'm like, hey, Allison, I don't know if during training you went to the bathroom or you were eating or had a phone call, like, you know, say you missed me saying it, but I actually don't guarantee the base pay for single people unless you got an exception, and the maximum is 2 your first weekend. Cool. 2 exceptions. Your first weekend is the maximum that we do. Because you just don't know you don't have the skills yet, right? It's like learning how to play basketball. Like, you got to learn that layup shot first, then we're going to teach you the jump shot, then we're going to teach you 3-pointers, and eventually you'll be shooting all over the court, but we have to go one step at a time, right? And so this weekend, we just taught you how to get a layup down. Cool. And so you're trying to shoot 3s, you don't even know how to dribble yet. So we got to take it one step at a time. Cool. So I'm going to pay you for these single people. I'm going to pay you for these husbands, like whatever it is, the problem. I'm going to pay you for this weekend, but going into this week, like, let's focus on married homeowners. Cool. And it's okay to do demos more just in the evenings and weekends. That's what I did, because I didn't have a lot of people home during the day, and that's fine. I ended up selling $8,600 my first week and made $1,600, which was pretty awesome. Right. And so I know that, you know, my manager coached me and told me to like do less appointments with the right people, spend more time with them, and that would build my business. And it was huge. it led me to a huge summer, whatever. And I just share that. And you guys could share me as an example or someone you know. But I didn't have a bunch of Mac customers when I started. My first weekend, I only did 5 appointments. Okay. But I did them with the right people, and I got awesome leads of friends and family that helped me load up my week, but I couldn't load up every day because most of the people I knew worked 9 to 5. So my demos were in the evenings and on the weekend. But I still got over 8,000 just doing that. Right. And so just sharing, like, you want to build a solid foundation that's built long-term so that you can do Cutco through college if you want. If you're just doing whatever, you're not getting your foundation there, it's going to fall apart. All right. And so we just want to explain what's in it for them. Like, it's not, I'm not going to pay you because I understand. Like, no, we want them to succeed. We want you to succeed. We want to make sure you focus on the right people. So you build the right foundation. So you build the best referrals. So you're really strengthening your business. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So that's really important that we're doing that. All right. So that's first weekend. So now at the end of the first week, so let me show you guys this. I'm going to put the link here if you want to open it and follow along, because we are going to role play this in like 3 minutes once I finish walking through it. We're going to role play and we're going to wrap up with some takeaways. All right. So putting people on base pay freeze, super freaking important. Okay. So their first week that they come in to do their QPR, not after their first weekend, but at the end of the first week, we're going to skills check them. And we told them that, by the way, when they came to advanced training, when you had their PC, they should have been told, hey, let's make sure to get this down by Sunday, because I'm going to test you then and see how you're doing. So we can kind of open the net on who you can see, right? So I'm like, all right, so have them do it, make sure they hit their markers, you do it for them, ask them what was different, have them do it back. So you just do a quick skills check, right? And if you don't know how to do a skills check, we have a document for that. So whether they sold a lot or a little bit, I'm always going to say, all right, cool. So, hey, Zavi, now that you've already been here for a little over a week, most important thing is that we help make sure you have the basics of Cutco playbook down. All right. You don't need to memorize the whole thing, but you want to have your main 3 bullets on the rec approach and your closing memorized. It's the foundation to your business. We want to make sure everyone has a strong foundation that's built so that they can build a long-term business. Cool. So base pay will always be guaranteed to you as long as you follow the program. And part of that is having your basics down. That's like having to know the menu to be a waitress or the plays to be allowed to go on the field. All right. So at team meeting this week, I'm going to skills check you again. And I'm excited to see those 3 golden pages improve. If you don't have your recs down and aren't comfortable saying the close by next Sunday, I will have to put you on a base pay freeze. And by the way, you can still work with Cutco. So guys, it's also the delivery. It can't be in a mean, like, I'm going to put you on base pay freeze. It's not like that at all. All right. It's just a matter of fact is what it is. Like, hey, if you don't know the plays, I can't put you on the field, so if you want to start, learn those plays, right? If you want to be first string on whatever, like this theater production, and you want to be the first person that's casted, like, you need to know your lines, right? If not, we can't put you there. We have to have someone that knows their lines. So it's a matter of fact and understanding that. All right. So anyway, so hey, if you don't have those down, I'm going to have to put you on base pay. And by the way, on base pay freeze. And by the way, you can still work for Cutco. You'll just be on a small freeze until you get it down. All right. It's kind of like being a waiter or the quarterback of a football team. Like, if you're a waiter, do you know what you have to learn? Yeah, the menu, right? Like, if you don't have the menu, like, and I wanted to be, I was a hostess and I wanted to be a waitress. And the manager said, like, as soon as you know the menu, if I say, what's in the, carpaccio, like what comes in it, like, you need to know. If I say, what's in the, quattro formaggio, whatever, I went to an Italian restaurant, and it was like, you need to know that. I was like, okay. And so I studied when I was hostessing so I could learn the menu, and then he tested me and I knew it, and I could start waiting tables. All right. It's a real thing. If you're a quarterback, what do you have to learn? The playbook, right? If you don't know those things, you can't be a waiter or quarterback, right? Like, in fact, it'd be dumb for the coach or the restaurant. It's like, put you out on the field or, put you in, if you don't have that memorized. And so the same thing applies here. I can't have you out on the field not following the program. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the team. All right. And actually, it's just saying it's not good for the customer. So it's not good for you. It's not good for the customer. All right, so for the customer, oh my God, I can't spell. There we go. And it's not good for the team. All right, So I'm like, hey, it's not good for you. It's not good for the customer, and it's not good for the team. All right. So great news is that you're still new and we have some time to work on this. Do you think you could memorize these three main points, the job, the joke, the reminder, by Wednesday or Thursday, whenever your team meeting is? All right. So I'm just going to put by team meeting. All right. Do you think that you could memorize these? Like, I get paid every time I show Cutco, and I can only call people I've been personally recommended to, so I just like those main points. And get comfortable with your 8 and 9. All right, awesome. I'm like, trust me, you're going to sell so much more and have a better business by doing this. All right. And then guys, at the team meeting, if they sucked again, just remind them, hey, you have one more shot Sunday before the official base pay freeze. I'm like, I'm sure you'll be fine. Like, do you want help? Like, we can meet with you tomorrow, like offer help, right? Oh, I can match you up with one of our reps on our team tomorrow night during team meeting. They can practice with you for like 15 minutes and help you get comfortable with it. Do you want some extra help so we can help you with it? Like, oh yeah, and if they were good, you're like, hey, nice job. Remember, this was Smartest Fuentes. Smartest Fuentes, his first weekend went 0 for 6. All right. I had a conversation about getting stuff down, by next Sunday. He came Sunday. And by the way, so his I had earlier, because he was 0 for 6 his first weekend. We helped him. I said, hey, do you want help? We can help you. We practiced with him that week. He sold almost every demo. His average order was like $100. And then I was like, hey, can we help you with your average order and like schedule you for a personal coaching so we can help you with that? He's like, yeah. By the way, Smurfs became one of our top reps, was a top assistant manager. He went to Pennsylvania to open an office up there and help us expand. He came back. He had an $800 average order. He averaged almost 30. I think it was 28 referrals per appointment. Right? He didn't start like that, but we helped him get there because of these conversations and giving him tips to help them get better. All right. And then if they still don't know it, all right, we don't have sample kits right now, but if you give them a sample kit, they need to bring it with them. But you're like, hey, if you're meeting them live, if you're meeting them on Zoom, cool. You're like, hey, I know, you test them again. And you're like, hey, I know you probably know what I'm going to say, but we need to put you on freeze. I'm like, and by the way, how that works, it's a temporary freeze. Temporary freeze to your base pay privilege. We can do one of two things. You can stick around today and we can work with you, practice and get this down so that, you can roll today, check it back out, or if they don't have it checked out, you're just like, you can go today, start doing demos and crush it. All right. But in order to be eligible for the guaranteed pay, you must have the basics down. We need to see you at office functions twice a week. Cool. Payroll and team meeting. That's part of being guaranteed the base. And you need 3 MAC appointments set up ahead of you. Cool. And by the way, we've had people on freeze before get this down and end up being some of our top representatives. I'm like, do you want to stay today and get it down? Or do you want to just practice until Wednesday and then we'll test you again then? Okay, cool. And that's it. And that's how we go through. All right. And this was really, really powerful for our organization. We mastered this back in South Florida in like 2007, 2008. And we got so many people good at the job that would not have gotten good and would have just kept collecting base pay, but they actually got good at this because we looked at their sheet, we saw what they needed, and we helped them get better. Cool. So I'm going to put us into rooms. Any questions real quick before we go into rooms? All right, cool.
Dude, it's pretty short. Maybe a bit longer, but it's pretty short, straight to the point. You just have to remember to like smile. It's not like I kind of noticed that because like when I read it in my head, I was like, if I say this in a flat tone, it's going to sound so horrible. So like, you really got to smile when you're saying this to let them know, like, it's not the end of the world. We're trying to help you out. Let's do this. I want
they need to feel that. They need to feel that you're wanting to see them succeed, and then show up.
Basically, yeah. I don't want to put you on base pay freeze. It's like, you kind of like, it's not my fault. It's just happening, basically. Yeah.
No, they just need to understand why, right? And it makes sense, like a waiter, which like we got to have this down. And so, hey, no worries, we'll work with you, we'll help you, type of, but they need to feel like you're actually trying to help them, and you have to guide them because if not, you'll get crushed on this. And every year there's 1 or 2 managers that get crushed with this and pay out way more incentive pay than they should have paid. And I don't want to see you guys go through that. All right. So any other I want to hear other like takeaways, comments. What was helpful about this for you?
I'll say this. Pay your people. I mean, the goal is to set them up for success, and get them off to a fast start. And that way they never have to rely on it again. like Kathy mentioned, is there if they need it, but set them up the right way, set them up for success. And when it comes to the freeze, again, it's just an educational moment. And when you take care of the rep, everything is taken care of, in return. And so you don't be that manager who's just like, oh, I'm submit this, don't look at it. It's not something that just gets turned in blindly. So, it's our business. Base pay directly correlates to your financial fitness in this business, is what I'll say.
Awesome. Zavi?
Well, when we were going through the script, I realized like the base pay freeze, it's just like if you ever played on a sports team and someone on your team got on probation, it's the same thing. Like, it doesn't mean you're not on the team. It doesn't mean that you don't get the benefits of working with the team. It's just that you're not doing what's required. Like, and you signed a contract for this job, so you're obligated by contract. And I feel like our reps and ourselves, we have to learn that anyway. When you sign a contract, you're obligated to that contract. It's a very simple concept.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, kids miss football games because they couldn't get grades right.
Yeah. Real quick, Francisco, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just noticed something. I was with Daniel. We were practicing it, and I noticed something. It's sometimes hard to say it without without it seeming scripted. So there's like, oh wait, look, my manager's reading off a script to me. I definitely I know like there's a script for everything, and I've noticed sometimes I forget that there's a script that they have for whatever's pertaining to me, and that's when it really matters. So I just thought I thought it was pretty interesting because just put the time in to practice it, and if you put that time commitment into your team, it will always come out better. And I figured, especially with those people who need the more help because they need that base pay freeze.
Yeah. So if you guys always remember, anytime you're coaching, it's what's in it for them. How are you helping them get better? How are you helping them improve, right? Always pay them for their first weekend, no matter what. You effed up, you weren't clear, even though you might have been super clear. And then guide them properly so that they can see success and they can be a key player on your team. If you guys do that, you're gonna have a lot more people that are excited about growing here, and people that you get to mentor and do life with, like travel with, do cool shit with. Man, we have a lot of fun in Vector. I love our company. I love traveling with our people. And I can't wait to see more of that in the years to come. So I